Let's get some reaction to what we heard from West Streeting from Dr John Puntis, co-chair of the group Keep Our NHS Public, a retired consultant paediatrician. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr Puntis, on LBC News tonight. What did you make of what we heard from West Streeting?
Well, I thought it was rather depressing in many respects, and I think this constant harping on the NHS being broken is wrong. It worries people, it drives them to go to the private sector, and I think it's very bad for staff morale. And we have to remember that the NHS is providing about 1.5 million interactions a day with patients, and in many respects, very good services are being offered. Of course, there are huge problems in the NHS which have been documented by Lord Darzi, and those need addressing. But I do worry that this constant refrain, the NHS is broken, is a prelude to saying that we need a new model and a new funding model. That hasn't been said explicitly, but it seems to be implied, and I think that would be very regrettable. Labour has a huge challenge, and it's fine to say it's in a terrible state and people are dying unnecessarily and they can't access care, and it's all down to Tory policies. But now Labour owns how the NHS is, and it has to come up with some detailed plans in terms of what's going to make things better. And I know it's got a 10-year review now lined up, reporting next year, but actually it's pretty urgent to do something now. If you just look at general practice, GPs are taking collective action, as you know, at present. That's 80% of surgeries. But we've actually lost 20% of GP surgeries over the last 15 years. So if we're going to do something about GP access and promoting continuity of care in general practice, this is a really urgent issue. It does have challenges in that the population has grown considerably. There are more sick people, more people with chronic conditions and multiple chronic conditions. That is true. I don't think that means we need a fundamentally different model. I think it means that NHS services have to grow and adapt, and that does require funding. And one of the reiterations by Labour is that we need reform, whatever that might be, but we don't need more money. And I think that's completely wrong. If you look at the historical spending on the NHS, it always used to have a 4% annual uplift. It hasn't had that for the last 14 years. If you look at how much is spent in comparable European countries, you're looking at 40 billion a year more in France and Germany, year after year compared with the UK. And Lord Darzi identified austerity and underfunding, particularly lack of capital funding, where he talked about a 37 billion deficit. He identified this as a major cause of the NHS's problems and its lack of productivity at the present time. So to ignore funding, I think, is completely wrong.